Hello, it's Warren Huart here. Hope you're doing marvelously well. We're back at Sunset Sound, and once again, we're in Studio 3. For those of you that follow me, you'll know this is my favorite studio. So, what are we going to do? We're going to do, of course, a full band. We're using the artist Christian Vey, who's a wonderful guitar player, the amazing Tony Franklin on bass, the fretless monster himself, and of course, my other good friend, Greg D'Angelo, an incredible drummer. So we've done a song which is about 4.5, 5 minutes long. It's a total piece of prog awesomeness. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And these guys are going to play their hearts out. And the best thing about this is we're going to record the whole thing with a combination of Sunset Sound's incredible mic collection, with their beautiful console, and Lewitt microphones, and an Audient ID14 and an ASP800. This gives us 10 inputs. We're going to record the drums through this initially, and then we're going to overdub the bass, all using this, and guitars and vocals. Never straying from an Audient and Lewitt microphones. And we're also going to record and overdub using all of the beautiful mics and the wonderful console that Sunset has. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's check it out. Here's the ASP800. Here's the ID14. Let's go and check out the mics. So here we have an LCT 240. Beautiful microphone sitting next to a U67, which of course is an extremely beautiful microphone. I believe these are going for about $10,000 or $12,000 now. They've got really expensive but beautiful sounding mics. So we've got the LCT 240s. We have them both as overheads here next to the 67s. We've also got, Greg is using 3 toms. He's got a rack and 2 floors. So I have my usual setup of 421s top and bottom, which is pretty standard for most people that record drums. You'll see that a lot of guys use 421s on top of the bottom. And here we have the little Lewitt DTP 340. So this is really gorgeous. So we have these, Justice on the top only. Snare. We have, of course, an SM57 top and bottom, as per normal. Not particularly expensive mics, but wonderful sounding microphones. And then we have the Lewitt MTP 440DM, which is also a great sounding dynamic microphone. Greg's kit is wonderful. It's a beautiful kit. It's DW. And of course, we have a Black Beauty here, which is just an insane sounding massive snare. And then we have an LCT 340 on the hi-hat, and then we have my mix of a 451 and an SM57. This has been my go-to combination ever since I worked with Dave Jordan. I love this combination. Here we have the LCT 640 sitting underneath the M49. So it's going to be an interesting comparison hearing this, because before, when I did this with some Shure microphones, I actually used the floor mics. But this time we went for the higher mics. I'm excited to hear what they sound like, because we have printed everything flat through the Audience. We're not coloring these at all, we're not compressing or EQing them. And here, of course, is the kick. It's a DTP 640 Rex. With the Sunset Sound miking, we're using a D112 inside and a FET47 on the outside and a Coles pulled back, which is a great combination of kicks. And here is the 640. This is a mic I personally use myself on kick drums, so I'm a big fan of it. You know, a lot of these microphones, the Lewitt microphones and the Sunset Sound microphones, the U67s, the 421s, these are mics that I combine. So personally speaking, I do use Lewitt microphones on drums, and I also use Shure's and Neumanns as well. So I'm not going to be overly surprised by the results. I'm expecting them to be pretty good whichever direction we go, because these are all very interchangeable microphones. I mean, the thing with drum mics, as you know, as we proved in that Van Halen one, is that a lot of great recordings were done with dynamic microphones anyway. It's not always hyper expensive microphones. It just helps and is very nice when you do have a pair of 67s you can use as overheads. So this is going to be a lot of fun to see what we come up with. Okay, so we have a session here with both of the recordings in it. At the bottom here, we have Lewitt microphones going through the Audient. We also have the DIs going through the Audient, and we also have mic'd up guitars. So it's pretty darn good. So let's just have a little look-see. Check out the bass, believe it or not. This is Tony Franklin, who's arguably one of the greatest bass players in the world. Let's have a listen. Beautiful. No plugins, nothing. Just stereo output. I'm going through my little Audient here, little ID4. Gorgeous. Okay, now I'm going to go up here and have a listen to the Sunset one. Now, on the Sunset one, I did compress this on the way in. As we talked about before, when I did this before with the Shure mics and the Focusrite, now that we're doing it with Lewitt mics and Audient and IK Multimedia, I'm still doing the same principle. I'm going to use the gear at Sunset to the best of its ability. You know, I'm going to hit the mic pre's hard. I'm going to use the compressors they've got, because the point is to be able to record using inexpensive mics like the Lewitts with an inexpensive system like the Audient, and just use plugins to see how close we can get. Because frankly, I mean, that's a great bass sound that I really don't have to do much to, because I compressed it on the way in the way I wanted. And now if I listen to the Lewitt and the Audient, sounds pretty darn good. But we can have some fun. We can open up AmpliTube here. And why don't we do a little why don't we go to an Ampeg here on the DI and do B15. Put some bottom end on it. Immediately beautiful. I mean, that's already a great sound. And all I did was go to and I'm not even pushing in the ultra lows. That's fantastic. When I was doing guitar overdubs, we went to AmpliTube, we went to a sound and opened it up, and the guitar player and the singer, you know, Christian, who wrote the song, was like, we have to save those settings. And we're like, those were the settings that we first opened up. I think this is the great thing about AmpliTube. It's the great thing about a lot of plugins these days, not just IK Multimedia, but all of the great companies now. They're smart. They know to put up a good, straightforward sound, which is 99% of the time is going to work. And that's a pretty darn good sound. Just on the DI, I mean, that's a great bass sound. All right, fantastic. So let's have a look at the drum mics. Let's create like a rough drum mix using a small amount of mics. That's comparable between the Lewitt and the expensive mics. So here we have the Rex, which if you notice was on the outside of the kick, not in the hole. Pretty darn good. So I'm going to pull this up underneath the kick out, which was a FET, which was being hit really hard. Let's have a listen to the FET. Soft sounding. Now we only use one half of the Rex. The great thing about the Rex is it has a condenser and a dynamic. And if we'd had more inputs, we could have split those two up, which would have been pretty remarkable. But it's sounding pretty darn good. Let's put that against the D112. D112. Good, it's heavily EQ'd to bring out the click. I can pretty much deal with that. I mean, if that was my only kick drum mic, which it is on my drum kit, I know how to use it. So with no plugins, that's pretty darn good. You're going to get both sets of drum mics, so you're going to be able to look at this and check out for yourself. The live recording was the drums and the bass. So you guys are going to be able to compare the drums and the bass recording. Like I said, the bass in particular had a lot more work done to it going in from the console. So this is the snare top of the Lewitt. Pretty snappy. These mics were taped together. Now, no compression, no EQ. Now, that wasn't true of the snare top of the 57. I did use an 1176, as I often do. So they're comparable levels now. I will say the downside of compressing when you go in is that Greg, who's a big rock drummer, you know, his favorite drummer is John Bonham, he plays like crazy, he digs in. You can tell that lot of ride bleed going into that. Where the way we printed the Lewitt is more dynamic, but I can probably do a little bit more with that in post. So that's always one of those things to think about. When you're in post, if you don't print as much compression on the EQ going in, then you've got more control on the mix. Having said that, neither of those is a lot of bleed. I mean, that's not a lot of bleed from a ride mic, so I wouldn't let it bother me. If it does bother you, then I would definitely come back on the compression. Okay, next up is the toms. Greg has a rack and 2 floor toms. Let's listen to this. So this is the toms using the Lewitt mics into the audience. Nice. We did spend some time tuning these and getting them right, and it paid off. Okay, so let's compare that to the... I might say that the low floor toms sound better with the DTP 340. Yeah, I'm getting more low end in general out of all of them, considering how much harder I was hitting the Sunset Sound ones. I was in the control room and Eric was printing this, so we weren't sitting there comparing levels, we were just printing what was good and clean, and he was making sure that he was printing levels that weren't clipping. Yeah, I do like that low, the lowest floor, definitely prefer it. So this is a similar result that we got from last time at Sunset. The standard 421s are great tom mics. They are great tom mics. I was just talking to Shelly Yakas yesterday and he was talking about using 421s on toms. He actually said that on Damn the Torpedoes, for those of you that are big Tom Petty fans, God rest his soul, he used 87s. He had one 87 between the 2 high toms and then another 87 between the 2 floor toms, just pulled back so he's picking up both toms. And then there are photographs with 421s in as well, but he said he preferred just to use the 87s. So it's interesting, 421s are standard and they sound great. And no disrespect to Sennheiser, but it does seem the inexpensive mics, they get beaten. Pretty darn good. So those DTP 340s definitely perform really well. Our next couple of things is our hat. Let's go into this section here. Nice. Crisp. El Lyco. Gonna flip up here quickly and have a listen to my double mic'd hat, which is a 451 and an SM57. Pretty comparable. If anything, kind of digging the Lewitt a little bit more. Seems to have a little tiny bit more separation. Maybe the pattern's a little tighter than it is on the 451. Little less snare bleed. So that's great. So it seems like may have a tighter pattern. All right, next up is the overheads. This is pretty much the proof of the pudding, because overheads are, now these were taped to the actual overheads themselves. So they're in exactly the same position. So we're going to compare a pair of U67s with a pair of LCT 240s. Sound good. So have a listen to 67s. Pretty comparable. Let's go to something at the end here. There we go. Sound good? I think similarly to this, it looks like I'm hitting the 67s a little harder. So they're printing a little bit harder going through the console. That's kind of one of the sounds of the console, is just getting, you know, just working the pre's a little harder. We always do that with vintage pre's, especially the Sunset Sound console, which is, you know, that one console made 4 Prince albums, 3 or 4 Prince albums, as well as many other albums, but it's a very famous console. And I love it. It's my favorite console. That's a pretty darn accurate, though, view of the kit from the 240s. Let's go and play the 67s in the same place. So, on first listen there, it seems like the Lewitt definitely has a better high-end response, like it seems to be really picking up some extra sparkle. But there's a smoothness in the 67, which you would hope. 67's going through the expensive console. It's interesting listening to this on the tom. So that's on the Lewitts. Let's go to the same place on the 67s. Now, just so you guys know, I use these same Lewitts on my overheads. I have a lot of choice of mics and I actually like what they do. One of the only downsides of large diaphragm condensers overhead, which I use all the time, I choose to use these, is that they tend to get a lot of lows, a lot of low mids, which will end up pulling out. Like immediately on these 67s, I love them. They sound fantastic, but I'm pulling out a lot of 350. I'm just going to pull that 350 out. Where if I go to the Lewitts, they've got snap on the snare, and the cymbals are singing, and they don't have that sort of low mid girth. This happens a lot for me. I use cheaper small diaphragm condensers very often on my acoustic guitars, because they don't pick up the super low lows, which I don't need in my acoustic guitars. So there's something to be said for, you know, horses for courses, as you know, using the right mic in the right situation. I'm impressed with those Lewitts, but then again, I use them all the time, so it's not really surprising that they sound good to me, because I know how to make them good. All right, last but no means least, and this is probably one of the biggest tests for us, is the room mics. Now, we had these up high. Let's have a listen to them. Nice. So these are a pair of LCT 640s going through the audience. They're good. All right, let's listen to the M49s. What we did last time we were in Sunset Sound is we put them down low. This time we put them up high. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm actually a huge fan of the 640. And as if you know, this is the TS. You can record both sides of the capsule. There's another video we did on the 640 TS where we went to United and recorded a whole band with one mic. We did like single recordings with the band live. We did just one mic on the drums, one mic on the bass, one mic on the vocal, and we used the 640. And it's fared really, really well. So I think those of you that have watched and have read any reviews on the 640s know that they're pretty outstanding. I would be happy to use a pair of 640s on my room mics any day of the week. Any day. That's a great room sound. Look, it's a great drummer. It's Greg D'Angelo, one of the best rock drummers around. It's a great drummer in a great room. And the mics are in the right place. It's not too bright. It's balanced. And it's a lot cheaper gear than this. I mean, that's not bad, but I like the snap on the 640. You know, if you were to do a blindfold test, at least for me, a blindfold test, I would prefer the Lewitts in this situation. Which is interesting, because I think we had really, really good results before with the inexpensive mics on the rooms, low down. I think these might be the winners for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a really, really simple mix, just blending volumes, nothing else. No compression, no EQ. So first of all, kick. So this is just the Lewitt kick, no compression, no EQ. Here's the snare top. I've got the toms in. We can go up to here. Hat. Rooms. And the overheads. This is just flat. Just some volume balancing. No compression, no EQ. These are recorded just the mics going in. Let's throw in the bass. Cool. Sounds great. Obviously, we both know, we all know that with some compression and EQ, that could really come to life. Okay, kick in, snare top, toms, hi-hat, overheads, and stereo rooms. And throw in the bass. Definitely getting an extra cymbal bleed. And like I said, a lot of that comes down to that we're compressing and EQing as we go in. I feel like I have a little bit more control of the uncompressed, un-EQ'd Lewitt Audient option. Not that it matters, both is completely usable to mix with. So this is the Lewitt, the AmpliTube, and of course the audio. Cool. Let's go to the other one. It's the Sunset. I feel like I don't like that, but it's the reason why I don't like that as much is that it needs the three elements of the kick to sound like the kick for me. The thing that's good about, and I use this same kick drum mic, so I'm very, very biased, I'm being honest. I use this kick drum mic on my kick. That's the Rex 640. No EQ, no compression. Not inside the hole, just sitting on the outside head. Sounds pretty darn good. And we know we can shape that and put a bit more bottom, pull out some low mids, put some top. The thing is with the D112 is it's inside and it's kind of rock. So it's not good on its own, but if you put the outside FET on, it's starting to feel like it. And then maybe if I add the Coles, now, I can get that good. I can EQ that, I can compress that, I can make that attacky. The God's honest truth is, I think for just one mic, the Rex is pretty hard to beat. A D112 or a D12 would not be good in that one position. Throwing the FET, getting better. The combination of the FET with the D112 is great. Let's go back to the other one. This AmpliTube is really rather special. Let's have a listen to DI with and without. Like a generic DI tone, nothing wrong with it at all. Put this on. Pretty awesome. It's getting pretty special. All right, let's have a quick comparison of some guitars before we move on. Obviously, we did a lot of different stuff. Here, for instance, super dark. That's going to need some top on it on a mix. That's a 57 on the cab. And I was using my Tone Tubby cab. Here is the stuff I did with Amplitude and with the EQ. Oh, the only reason why we did this is because we were in record. This was the sound that Christian loved and wanted to save. Which is just the standard sound. So that was done going through the Sunset Sound mic pre's. Now here is exactly the same guitar going through the Amplitude, but using the Audient mic pre's. Let's go here. So I'm intrigued by this. I haven't done a direct comparison of this yet, but we're going to. So this is interesting because this is the same guitar settings and the only difference is the print of the DI. And one is a lot more expensive of a print than the other. All right, now let's listen to the Sunset Sound mic pre's with the Amplitude. Back to the Amplitude with the Audient. Interesting. There's a little bit more low girth going through those really expensive mic pre's. However, there's more high end on the Audient, which I like. So I almost feel like I could get a bit of both. I could just kind of take the bottom end and just kind of beef it up a little bit. I mean, I'm bringing it up, what, a tiny bit more? Now go back and listen to the Sunset Sound mic pre's. I don't know, I prefer that. That tells us that the DI No compression, no EQ. The DI on the Audient is pretty darn good. Especially because most people at home, and that's, you know, what this is aimed at, most people at home are going to be plugging in the front of that Audient. So they're going to plug in the front. They've got something like AmpliTube here for their amp simulation, their emulations, whatever they're using, and it's giving you great results. Again, there's some low mids in this sound that I'm just going to end up taking out. It's also a little too compressed sounding. It doesn't have that dynamics that this does. That part is really dynamic. So going through the mic pre on the really expensive console and getting like that extra girth actually is detrimental for the sound at least I'm going for. And yet plugging into the front of an inexpensive unit like the Audient seems to give us really great results. And it's probably got a lot to do with AmpliTube. You know, in their defense, they are making something for an everyman. This is the standard. I mean, most people are recording with Audients. You know, these affordable kinds of interfaces now. Nobody is going into a studio on a regular basis and going through $1 million worth of console. So I'm glad that this sounds good, and I'm glad it works because it speaks to where we are. It's really kind of a great lesson. So if we listen to the full mix, so what I'm doing here is I'm putting guitar and bass from the Lewitt with the Lewitt Audient with the AmpliTube Audient guitars. It needs a mix badly. No mix whatsoever. Bass is super hot. We can bring the bass down. That needs a mix. If we go to the bass and then we use the guitars, again with the AmpliTube, but using the Sunset Sound mic pre's. It's comparable. It's very comparable. You guys will get to play with the bass and drum sounds to your heart's content. And what's great about that is you'll really get to see what you can do. I think ultimately we've come back to that same sort of conclusion that so much of it is to do with the player, the performance by an amazing player in a great room. I like using the Lewitt stuff because I personally chose a lot of these mics myself, so I know how they work. I'm a big fan of that DTP 640. You know, you've seen a few videos I've done with people like Kenny Airnoff who love that kick drum mic. It's a very popular kick drum mic, especially with the condenser and the dynamic, even though I'm only using the dynamic side because we were using a limited amount of inputs. The fact that it has those type of capabilities is pretty special. So again, hats off to Audient, Lewitt, and IK for providing some inexpensive stuff and getting great sounding stuff. So you can get to play with these tracks. So obviously go and download the tracks and have fun. So you can download the files. Somewhere around here, there will be a link. Just go to the link. You can download the files. You can listen to the multi-mic through this beautiful console. You can listen through the Audient recording with the Lewitt microphones and with AmpliTube. It's just going to be a lot of fun. So check that out. And of course, you can listen to, well, it's a great song. It's an insane song, to be quite frank. And Greg will deny this, but he said to me a few months ago that he would love to do this masterclass with Tony, but he wanted a prog rock song. So this song's pretty silly. It's pretty insane. Christian came up with a really crazy song. So check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's got some beautiful playing, and have a marvelous time recording and mixing.